For the longest time, there was one rail fanning location that I promised myself I would never go to. Pine Junction in Gary, Indiana. And the reason isn't even because it's in Gary. It's because of CN. If you Google, "Is Pine Junction safe?" the only things you will see are old railroad forum posts from 2006 to 2012, back when CSX and CN used to be super mean and kick out anyone there. However, since then, the area around Pine has been turned into a park, so the road is actually accessible. Thus, you can go in and they won't kick you out. I didn't know, and it took a lot of convincing, and I mean a lot of convincing, from other rail fans before I finally changed my mind and decided it would be worth it to travel to Pine Junction. And speaking of other rail fans, I was also going on this day to meet up with Central Kansas Railfan. I've mentioned this guy in a lot of videos. He's basically me, but his videos are better. I jokingly call him my clone because his videos are really similar. If you haven't watched this guy, go subscribe to him. He deserves it. Anyways, he was coming to Chicago as well, and so we decided to meet up at Pine. I was very excited to finally meet him in person after about a year of just talking online through YouTube comments. If you don't know about Pine Junction, oh boy, there's no better place to see trains. Because at this one road, going from north to south, you have the Canadian National Matson subdivision into Kirkyard, the elevated Kirkyard lead, which covers mostly Kirkyard trimmer movements, the nearly abandoned NS and CN Pine Yard, Norfolk Southern Chicago line, the busiest line by far with loads of traffic as well as foreign power, CSX's bar sub, a relatively slow line with good power every once in a while, and the practically abandoned CN City subdivision, where the South Shore and a couple CN locals interchange with the rest of the railroads here at Pine. This is all leftover from when Gary was a huge city of industry, and just the coincidence of all these railroads having to wrap around the southern part of Lake Michigan to get into Chicago created this absolutely insane spot. There's nothing quite like it. And so this place can see almost 150 trains per day. It's basically railfan paradise, and is probably the busiest freight train location in the entire country. It's so good that it was worth a visit. So, during my Memorial Day extravaganza in 2026 with my dad, we made our way to Pine Junction on the first day of our journey, May 23rd, 2026. The journey into Gary was supremely boring, with literally nothing interesting to see along the way. Once we got there, we had to contend with Clark Road. North Clark Road, specifically. North Clark Road is the road that leads into Pine Junction, and it is, the worst road I've ever driven on. It's terrible! There is so many potholes, it's shaky as heck because it's surrounded by marsh on both sides. I mean, just look at it. It's horrible. There's like a 2-foot deep, 5-foot wide pothole halfway down the road, so if you ever come down here, look out for that. Once we got there, I got to meet up with Central Kansas Railfan in person, as well as another railfan, General Cheese. Yeah, hearing CKR's voice in person was absolutely crazy because I've spent literal hours binge watching his videos. But anyways, we didn't have too much time to talk because this is Pine Junction, and our first train arrived soon, NSB-09 with a lovely Dash 9 duo, the trailing one being a partial whiteface. The end of this very short train couldn't even clear before the real MVP of Pine Junction showed up. The CN Yard moves. This one being powered by a SD38AC Duo. With how good this was, and the fact I'd never seen Bessemer before, and the fact it was a fallen flag unit, we made our way under the bridge to get a closer look, passing by an E&JE SD38 Duo and the stopped BNSF transfer CN L595-91 on the way, before we finally found the two Bessemer units doing switching on the other side of the bridge. As I said, these two units are pretty special, not only because of the paint, but also because of the model. These are an SD38AC, not your typical SD38 or SD38-2. This model was basically a transition between the two, with some -2 components but not a lot. The main feature is the change from a DC generator to an AR10 alternating current generator, which is where the AC name comes from. BNLE, DM&IR, and the BC Hydro Power Company were the only railroads to own them, with BNLE having 6. As those two units reversed into the yard, a power move of CN engines came out of it, with an SD75 IACC rebuild leading and an X-City rail trailing second. The crew climbed out of the front of 8343, a unit that doesn't seem to want to leave me alone since this is the third time I've seen it, and they got back in relatively quickly before the BNLE SD38s came out of the yard again as light power. Then, both sets of power headed back towards the yard, with the mainline engines going all the way in and the BNLE engines stopping right in front of us. Before the BNLE units could make their way fully back into the yard, the gates over by the NS and CSX tracks went down just in time for CSX B535 to rush by with a mace in the lead. With no more action over by the CN and us not wanting to miss any more mainline trains, we made our way back over to the main area of Pine Junction by the NS and CSX tracks. It was at this point that General Cheese informed us of the 3 good trains that were coming on the CSX and NS. NS 65K with NS 4001 trailing, Amtrak 40 with, we'll get to that, and CSX I-169 with the Pan Am unit leading. We finished the conversation just in time for an ugly SC-44 with a terrible horn to whip by leading Amtrak 371. The next train was the first proper CN pull-down job I caught, with 2 of my beloved E&JE SD38s for power, being 663 and 657. Because I'm the Jays' biggest fan, I would have ran over to the bridge in a heartbeat if CSX I-116 wasn't coming. General Cheese knew it was near, and trailing fourth was a YN2AC44, and a freshly repainted YN3C Jiva was in the lead. Considering how rare the YN2s are now, and the fact that one is being pulled out of service almost every week, I figured this would be my last chance to ever see a YN2, so I had to take it. The unit was 503, a unit I saw before in Bensonville, ironically enough. By now, the Jays had rolled to a stop, and it was time for Central Kansas Railfan to leave. However, we both got distracted by CN L595, which, for some reason, now had the AC-44 in the lead and the Ace trailing. No clue why they swapped them. CKR did not care one bit because, well, he's a BNSF foamer and he sees these units all the time. But they are rare on CN, so I wanted to see them. Not to mention the leading unit shares its number with a certain infamous Grand Trunk Pacific. However, the movement of that train meant the Jays were now blocked. That didn't seem like an issue until they started reversing. That meant that if I wanted a shot of them, I had to go under the bridge, which I figured would be fine. I'm just glad it was a bridge, not a crossing. It was absolutely terrifying running underneath the two trains, but I did make it to the other side just in time to get a shot of the two JSD-38s. Once the Jays slunk back into the yard, I made my way over to the main area of Pine Junction, and just like last time I did this, an Amtrak showed up soon after. It was the Blue Water with a duo of ugly SC-44s, but at least the horn was normal this time. Me and General Cheese then got the only CPKC trackage rights train we saw on this day, which was the Autorack train 137 headed west, with a CP AC-44 rebuild in the lead and KCSM Jivo trailing second. Just after 137's head end passed, the sun came out, and that signaled a sharp increase in the amount of trains. It had been pretty disappointing for Pine Junction standards up to this point, but things were about to get crazy. And that was exemplified by CSX I-192, which appeared out of nowhere heading east and met with the 137. After the meat cleared, 2 more Railfans appeared to join me and General Cheese at Pine, just in time for NS 317 to appear, with a GEVO leading and GP60 in tow. Very nice. Oh, and just ignored the fact that my camcorder battery died and the stabilizer cut out halfway through the shot. After that, even more Railfans showed up, 2 of them being from Atlanta, and they had driven all the way up here just to visit Pine. I was chatting with them until all of a sudden we started hearing the sounds of EMD 645s in the distance and knew that a pull-down was coming. It came into view soon after, and it was the Bessemers. Not wanting to miss this, we ran down to the bridge, and I barely got there in time before the Bessemers cleared. As the train rolled to a stop with this unique C&W hopper directly over the bridge, I decided to walk back to the main area for 2 reasons. 1, so I could get a wide shot of the Bessemers reversing, and 2, because I didn't want to risk missing any more trains. Since I had already gotten a lot of coverage of the Bessemers earlier and a semi-decent shot of them going up the hill, I figured that it would be worth sacrificing them for another mainline train. That ended up backfiring, however, as the Bessemers moved before anything else showed up. It was quite a lengthy wait for the next train, and of course during that wait even more foamers showed up, which had become a regular occurrence throughout the rest of the day. The train to finally break our dead streak was Amtrak 49 with a lovely Phase 5 P42 duo with the counting unit in the lead to boot. After that, the action on the CSX started to pick up. B157 appeared and pulled into the CSX siding at Pine, and after that we saw the headlights of an intermodal in the distance. We thought this was going to be the Pan Am unit for sure, but nope, it was I-115, which had the unfortunate side effect of trapping all of us foamers on this side of the tracks as you wanted a non-backlit shot. Surely that won't be a problem, right?
Seconds later.
Not one, but two Norfolk Southern trains came at the exact same time, both getting blocked by I-115. And those two Norfolk Southern freights weren't the only thing that got blocked. No, that would be too merciful. A CN pull-down also got blocked, and it had an Iowa Northern unit leading. Are you kidding? Since Iowa Northern was acquired by CN so recently, their units haven't had much time to disperse across the system, so seeing one here is pretty rare. This is actually the only one assigned to Kirk Yard. I had to get a better shot of it, so I headed over towards the CN tracks and hoped that it would come back, and on my way caught an Amtrak. Once we all made it over to the CN yard tracks, we did see the Iowa Northern unit in the distance, but it was going away from us, so we wouldn't be catching that. We also spotted the power from yesterday's B157 sitting behind it. We then made our way back to the main area in defeat just in time for a very short NS-10R heading east with Gevo junk. A little later, we heard the horn of what sounded like one of the Bessemer SD-38ACs in the distance behind the CN yard track. The guy you can see running towards it actually lives out in Pennsylvania by the Bessemer, and so he knew he needed to see it. The rest of us didn't, because we had all seen the Bessemers earlier. However, that ended up backfiring because it was actually not the same duo of Bessemers we saw earlier. It was the third one assigned to Kirk Yard, 866, pulling out of the yard with a movement of CSX coke hoppers. The next train to approach was on the Norfolk Southern. When we saw that it was in fact an NS engine leading in the distance, we were all briefly hopeful that it would be 65K with NS 4001 trailing. Those hopes were dashed when it got closer and we saw that there was a C6M leading, since 65K had an ace leader. It was just some random NS manifest. I actually couldn't find the symbol for this one for some reason. After that, the next train that showed up was finally CSX I-169 with the 1981 Pan Am Railways Heritage Unit in the lead, which is the first of the 3 trains we were all waiting for by this point. It was leading solo, which was even better, and it was just really nice to see because, this is only my 4th CSX Heritage Unit ever, and I live really close to the Garrett sub, so I consider it absolutely disgraceful that it took me this long to see this unit. The DPU was just a GEVO, but for once I'm glad it was, because I couldn't think of another unit that would be better to pair with the Pan Am unit than this one. Once the tail end of I-169 rolled out of view, by some sheer ironic coincidence, the Iowa Northern pulled out of the yard. Since Iowa Northern only started operations in 1981, this unit clearly wasn't built for them. It started life as Louisville and Nashville 4043. When L&M became part of Seaboard, it became one of their units. Once CSX was created, it was acquired by them and repainted into YN2 before being sold to Locomotive Leasing Partners, where it was lettered LLPX. The unit was never repainted into their livery and was acquired by Iowa Northern while still in CSX YN2. After that, it was repainted into Iowa Northern's Canadian Pacific-inspired livery. It worked on Iowa Northern as a local unit and on their various short-line jobs until 2025, when CN acquired Iowa Northern, and a few months after that, it was transferred to the Kirkyard Hump jobs. And it probably will never leave, considering the reputation these engines have. Knowing the Iowa Northern unit would soon reverse back into the yard, me and 2 other foamers made our way over to the CN yard area and climbed a small gravel hill next to the elevated CN track. It wasn't long before they started reversing and I got a great shot of CN 1915, the Canadian cab trailing second, as well as of course the titular Iowa Northern unit. Who knows how long it'll be before I get the shot at seeing another one of these. With the Iowa Northern unit gone, I snapped a quick photo of Bessemer 866, which was sitting across the tracks from it, before the gates went down in the main area. I pointed my camera over there, knowing I would get a crap shot, and crossed my fingers that it wouldn't be something good. It was GEVO's. Not wanting that to happen again, I made my way back over to the two main crossings and chatted with yet another railfan who had showed up while I was over there, and we soon caught NS 266 heading east with bean sniff Gevos. The trailing one was a somewhat rare H2 Gevo though, so I'm not complaining too much. While that was passing, the Jays pulled out of the yard again. I would have gone over there for another shot, but I didn't have the time. So I decided to set my camera on the ground to get this cool, low angle, except it's not really because the train's elevated, I guess, shot of the two units reversing. After that, we saw headlights for a westbound NS train, then it stopped for like 20 minutes and then finally got moving again. It was 65K, finally! A train that we thought was going to be here 2 hours before it actually was. With an awesome ace leader, and of course NS 4001, one of the Sonic Bonnets trailing second. This is my first time seeing this unit after seeing 4000 3 times, so it's nice to finally get a shot. Oh, and as it was passing, that Amtrak unit with the dreadful horn came back. But that wasn't the only train that passed while 65K slowly went through Pine. CSX M380 came by as well, just as the tail end of 65K was clearing, and of course, being CSX, both units were disgusting Gevos. And soon after that, the final train of my first visit to Pine Junction rolled into view. The most unfortunate train I've ever seen, the northbound Amtrak Floridian. Just look at it. So, I bet you're wondering, what was that? How did that happen? What hell did the passengers have to endure for that consist to get created? Well, allow me to inform you. This Floridian departed Miami on time with a standard Amtrak consist, of 312 of Freedom 250 unit leading, and a Phase 5 P-42 DC number 201 trailing second. They almost immediately hit their first hiccup before they were even out of Florida when a faulty car caused a stop in Jacksonville. It took them 4 hours to remove the faulty car in Jacksonville. Bruh. After that, the train continued north as normal, and it was going well for a bit. They were even making up a little bit of time. Until, in typical Charger fashion, 312 died in Maryland. So the unit had to stop for 90 minutes, and they couldn't fix the 312. So they had to steal a freight engine, and that freight engine was CSX 924, which you saw leading the train. Oh boy. And things just got worse. It took them over an hour to get the CSX engine to the Amtrak. And things only got worse because shortly after the CSX engine took over, it hit a tree. And one of the ditch lights got busted, so that was fun. However, things were going, okay at this point. At least the train was moving still, although it was almost 7 hours late, and they wouldn't make up any more time due to the speed restriction on freight engines leading Amtrak at 60 miles per hour, so they wouldn't be going very fast. It made its way through all of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, past me and the other foamers at Pine Junction, and just as they were getting into Chicago, guess what? The CSX 924 also died! It's a GEVO! An evolution... It should not have died... What? What is this train? Why? Okay, so yeah. So that happened. So then they had to get an Amtrak Dash 8 from the Amtrak Chicago yard to come and rescue the train. And it finished the journey almost 8 hours late with 2 rescue engines on the head end. Oh my god! In a time shorter than it took for that Amtrak to finish its journey, I was heading back to Pine Junction. After my visits to O'Hare and Bensonville Yard, there wasn't anything coming in either location that I could catch, and I needed somewhere else to go to burn the last hour and a half of the trip before I had to go home. Since we had to drive right by Pine, I figured I might as well go back for a short revisit. And yeah, it was worth it. Once we got there, we immediately found CPKC 231 tied down right in front of one of the Pine crossings with an ace leader, which was pretty nice. In addition to that, there were not 1, but 2 CN trains rolling by. One on the Matson sub that we missed the power of, and a trimmer. The trimmer was so long that as I was waiting for it to reverse, I was genuinely convinced that it was a mainline train that was going into the yard, and I wouldn't see trimmer power at the end, and instead I'd just see an EOTD. But nope, it was trimmer power, and disappointingly, it was the Iowa Northern unit. Yeah, it's rare, but I would have rather seen something else. With the CN action gone, or so I thought, I made my way back over to the main area and got 1 photo of 231 before I saw a train going over the bridge in the distance. For those who've never been to Pine Junction, the CN line into Kirk Yard goes over a bridge over the other 2 lines before looping down into the yard. So I knew that something was going to come on the track on the other side of the bridge. So I reluctantly walked back underneath the bridge to the other side. And before that train could get here, well, CSX M343-91 showed up. And I'm just going to show you the consist, because I don't think words can do this one justice. Yeah, an ex-City Rail GE6 Bluebird ST75M and whatever that weird switcher thing was. I don't know. Please tell me. Yeah, pretty good consist. I'm kinda mad it got backlit, but, whatever. I need to catch this train, too. This was some random CN manifest into Kirk that I had seen going over the bridge. I have no idea what this symbol is, but it was a pretty good power set, with an SD70M-2 leading and a CN-9 trailing second. Those are getting really rare now. The crew was also super friendly and actually chatted with me while they were switching the points. Either way, eventually it was time for them to go into Kirk Yard. As they passed over this crossing, the SD70M blew its horn, which wouldn't be that exciting if the horn wasn't stupid loud. You know that thing when you hear a noise that's so loud that your ears stop working for a second? Yeah, that's how loud this was. I don't know why. It was ear-piercing. After that, I actually had the chance to take good photos of 231 since the CN action had finally calmed down. By now, it was getting pretty late and we knew we would have to head home soon, so I tried to get as many photos as I could in a quick of time as I could. I know one of my friends, I'm looking at you, Panzer, loves KCS and the Aces, so I bet he's super jealous. Anyways, on our way out, we did end up getting one more train, which was M380 again, except this time it had BNSF power. Leading was a Gevo, but trailing was a somewhat rare AC-44, which is pretty cool. And those are my 2 trips to Pine Junction, a location I never thought I'd go to, but I'm so glad I changed my mind and went. It's actually one of the safest rail fanning locations in Gary. The crews were all super nice, there were so many other foamers, and everyone working there clearly understood why we were there. The shots definitely aren't the best, but it's still an awesome location that I'd recommend anyone visit if they're in the area. I mean, CKR visited from Kansas, so it has to be good, right? But yeah, with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to catch those units while you can, especially the ones that are stuck in Kirkyard forever, and I will see you in the next video.